Captain Eric Doyle stood at the viewport of the exploration vessel Starlight Wanderer, watching the unfamiliar asteroid belt drift past. The ship had traveled farther than most human expeditions, deep into the Andromeda Arm where the Grand Galactic Alliance rarely bothered to patrol. "How much longer until we complete the survey, Lisa?" Eric asked, turning to his science officer. Lisa Ward looked up from her console, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her face. "About 6 hours, Captain. Though I'm not sure why we're even bothering. The Alliance charts mark this entire sector as low strategic value. Nobody's been out here in decades." Eric smiled slightly. "That's exactly why we're here. Humanity joined the Alliance to explore, not to follow their rules about what space is worth visiting. The Starlight Wanderer was a modest vessel by Alliance standards, but it represented the best of human engineering. While most Alliance species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, humans were newcomers, having achieved faster than light travel just 70 years ago. What humans lacked in experience, they made up for in curiosity and determination. "Captain, I'm picking up an unusual energy signature," called out Kyle Bennett from the sensor station. "It's faint but definitely artificial, coming from the largest asteroid in the cluster." Eric leaned over Kyle's shoulder, studying the readout. "Could be an old mining operation or a shipwreck." "Whatever it is, it wasn't in the Alliance database," Lisa said, joining them. "And it's using a power source I've never seen before." Eric straightened up. "Well, we came all this way to discover something new. Helm, bring us closer. Combat status 2, shields up." The Starlight Wanderer glided through the asteroid field, its engines barely a whisper against the vacuum of space. As they approached the largest asteroid, the crew fell silent. Embedded in the rock was a ship unlike any they had seen before. Its hull was smooth and curved, with no visible weapons or engines. Parts of it seemed to glow with a soft blue light. "It's still powered," Lisa whispered. "After who knows how long." Eric tapped his communications badge. "Bridge to Dr. Phil Martinez. Meet me in the shuttle bay with a medical kit. We're going to check out a derelict vessel." 20 minutes later, Eric led a small team across the short distance between their shuttle and the alien ship. Their magnetic boots clicked against the unknown metal as they approached what appeared to be an airlock. "The hull material is remarkable," Lisa said, scanning with her handheld device. "It's partially organic, almost like it was grown then built." Phil examined the airlock mechanism. "I can't find any obvious way to open it. No buttons, no levers." As if responding to his words, the door slid open, revealing a softly lit corridor beyond. "Well, that was easy," Eric said, though. His hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. "Let's proceed carefully. Remember, we're guests here." The interior of the ship was even stranger than the outside. The walls pulsed with gentle blue light, and the air was surprisingly fresh. They passed through curving hallways that seemed designed for beings smaller than humans. "The life support is still working," Lisa marveled. "This technology is incredible." "And there's no dust," Phil added, "almost like the surfaces are self-cleaning." They reached what appeared to be the ship's bridge, a circular room with a transparent ceiling showing the stars above. In the center sat several small chairs, sized for beings no larger than human children. "Hello?" Eric called out. "Is anyone here?" A soft noise came from behind a console. The humans turned, weapons half raised, as a small figure emerged from hiding. The alien stood barely 4 feet tall with delicate limbs and smooth blue-gray skin that glowed faintly from within. Its large eyes blinked at them with obvious fear. "We mean no harm," Eric said, slowly holstering his weapon and raising his empty hands. The alien spoke, its voice musical and light. Although the words were unintelligible, the universal translator, in their badges, began processing the language. After a moment, the translator offered an approximation. "You are not Krovak hunters." "No," Eric replied. "We're humans, from Earth. We're explorers." The alien's inner light pulsed brighter. "Humans, the new ones. We heard of you. Alliance members, yes?" "Yes, though we're fairly new to the Alliance." The alien seemed to relax slightly. I am Zithran. My people are Nearthal. Lisa stepped forward, wonder in her eyes. We thought the Nearthal were extinct. The Alliance records say your civilization was lost centuries ago. Zithran's light dimmed noticeably. Not extinct, forgotten, abandoned. The alien gestured for them to follow. Others are here. Come. Zithran led them deeper into the ship, to a large chamber where dozens of Nearthal lay on beds, many clearly injured or ill. The air hummed with a strange melody that seemed to come from the aliens themselves. Our escape vessel, Zithran explained. We hide here for many cycles. Systems failing now. Phil immediately moved to examine the injured aliens, his medical scanner whirring. Captain, these people need help. Some have radiation poisoning, others have infected wounds. Eric knelt beside an elderly Nearthal whose light was barely visible. What happened to your people, Zithran? The alien's voice grew bitter. Once we were many, our homeworld beautiful, full of light and song. Then came Nexus Wars. Alliance said our world had no strategic value. They took defenses, left us exposed. When Krovak Empire attacked, no one came. The Alliance abandoned you? Lisa asked, shocked. They deemed us expendable. We are small, no warriors. Our value only in our knowledge of living systems. Zithran touched a wall and it responded by changing color. We build with life itself. Our ships, our homes, our medicine, all grown, not made. Eric exchanged glances with his officers. The Alliance had strict protocols about interfering with other species, especially ones officially listed as extinct. The proper procedure would be to report this finding and wait for Alliance diplomats to handle the situation. But looking at the suffering Nearthal, Eric knew they didn't have time for protocol. Zithran, we can help you. Our ship has medical facilities and we can take you somewhere safe. Alliance will not allow it, Zithran said. They decided our fate long ago. Eric stood, determination on his face. I'm not asking the Alliance. I'm offering you human help, which means we sometimes make our own rules. He tapped his badge. Doyle to Starlight Wanderer. We've found survivors. Begin emergency medical evacuation and prepare the ship for return to Earth. As the human medical team arrived and began treating the Nearthal, Lisa pulled Eric aside. Captain, taking them to Earth without Alliance approval could cause serious diplomatic problems. Eric watched as Phil gently treated a young Nearthal child, whose frightened glow slowly brightened with relief. Look at them, Lisa. They're remarkable beings who were abandoned because someone decided they weren't important enough to save. If that's how the Alliance works, then maybe humanity needs to show them a better way. The rescue took hours. By the time all 47 surviving Nearthal were safely aboard the Starlight Wanderer, Eric knew his career might be over. Taking an extinct species to Earth without permission would break countless regulations. But as Zithran and the other aliens marveled at the human ship with grateful wonder, their inner lights glowing with renewed hope, Eric couldn't bring himself to regret his decision. Set course for Earth, he ordered, and send a message to Admiral Franklin. Tell her we're bringing home guests who need our protection. Tell her that while the galaxy turned away, humanity is stepping up. Admiral Nancy Franklin paced the length of her office at Earth Space Command headquarters. The large windows overlooked the sprawling buildings of Washington, D.C., but she barely noticed the view. Her attention was fixed on the report in her hand. Let me understand this clearly, she said to the holographic image of Captain Eric Doyle that floated above her desk. You found a ship of supposedly extinct aliens, and instead of reporting to Alliance headquarters as protocol demands, you're bringing them directly to Earth? Eric's image flickered slightly across the millions of miles of space. Yes, Admiral. The Nearthal survivors are in desperate need of medical attention. Many wouldn't have survived a detour to Alliance space. Nancy sighed and rubbed her temples. Do you understand what you've done? The political storm this will create? The Alliance considers control of rediscovered species to be strictly under their jurisdiction. With respect, Admiral, these people were abandoned by the Alliance, left to die because they weren't strategically valuable. I couldn't do the same. Nancy studied Eric's determined expression. She had known him since he was a cadet, stubborn, principled, and usually right about the tough calls. How many survivors? 47. Their leader is named Zithran. They're peaceful, highly intelligent, and possess remarkable biological technology. Their ship is partially alive, Admiral. Grown, not built. This caught Nancy's attention. Biotechnology? How advanced? Dr. Martinez says it's unlike anything he's seen. The Neanderthal can manipulate living cells at will. They might be able to cure diseases we've struggled with for centuries. Nancy turned to look out the window. Human membership in the Galactic Alliance was still new and somewhat fragile. Earth had fought hard for a seat at the table among the older starfaring races. This could destroy everything they had worked for, or it could give humanity a stronger position depending on how they handled it. You'll arrive in 3 days? Yes, Admiral. I'll alert Lunar Medical Institute to prepare for the arrivals. And Eric? I hope you're right about this. The transmission ended, and Nancy immediately placed another call. Get me Dr. Alan Peterson at Lunar Medical, and then I need to speak with the President. 3 days later, the Starlight Wanderer docked. At Earth's orbital station, media from around the world had gathered, alerted by rumors of a first contact situation. Dr. Alan Peterson led a team of medical specialists who boarded the ship to assess the Neanderthal before bringing them to the Lunar Medical Institute. Alan had expected many things, but nothing prepared him for the gentle, glowing beings he encountered. The Neanderthal's inner light pulsed in rhythm with their emotions, bright with curiosity as they met the human doctor. Their cellular structure is fascinating, Alan said as he examined Zithran. They can control their bioluminescence at will. And look at these readings. They appear to be communicating through light patterns as well as sound. Zithran looked up at the doctor. Our bodies speak many languages. Light, sound, chemical. It is how we heal ourselves and others. Can you show me? Zithran placed a small, four-fingered hand on Alan's arm. Where they touched, Alan's skin tingled pleasantly, and a minor cut he'd received earlier that day visibly closed and healed. Remarkable, Alan whispered. If we could learn this ability. We will teach you, Zithran said, if you will protect us. Later that day, in a secure conference room at Earth Space Command, Admiral Franklin met with Captain Doyle, Dr. Peterson, and representatives from Earth's government. The Alliance has demanded we turn the Neanderthal over to them immediately, Nancy announced. Their ambassador, Grand Minister Vorthak, will arrive tomorrow to collect them. On what grounds? Eric asked. According to Alliance law, rediscovered. Species are wards of the Alliance Council until they're deemed independently viable. Nancy's voice made clear what she thought of this policy. That's ridiculous, Alan protested. The Neanderthal are fully intelligent beings, they don't need guardians. It gets worse, Nancy continued. I had our intelligence officer, Samantha Wright, dig deeper into Alliance records. The Neanderthal weren't just abandoned. There's evidence suggesting Alliance officials deliberately withdrew protection from their homeworld because the Krovak Empire offered trade concessions in exchange. A shocked silence fell over the room. They traded an entire species for political advantage? Eric finally asked. Nancy nodded grimly. And now they want to contain the evidence of what they did. We can't let that happen, Alan said. Besides, the medical implications of their biotechnology are incredible. We've already run preliminary tests. Their cellular regeneration techniques could potentially cure cancer, extend human lifespan, even regrow limbs. The Secretary of Defense leaned forward. What would happen if we refused to hand them over? Sanctions, certainly, Nancy replied. Possibly even expulsion from the Alliance. But we have leverage, Eric pointed out. Our water purification technology. Half the Alliance worlds depend on it. Nancy smiled slightly. I've already reminded them of that fact. The meeting continued for hours, debating options and potential consequences. By the end, they had reached a decision. Earth would grant the Neanderthal official refugee status and diplomatic protection. The next day, Grand Minister Vorthak arrived at Earth Space Command. The Ulthrian towered over the humans at nearly 8 feet tall, his gray skin and massive frame imposing in the human-sized meeting room. "This situation is unacceptable," Vorthak rumbled. "The Nearthal must be remanded to Alliance custody immediately." Admiral Franklin sat calmly across from the giant alien. "The Nearthal have been granted protected status by Earth's government. They will remain under our protection." "You have no authority." "They came to us seeking asylum," Nancy interrupted. "They've told us how the Alliance abandoned them during the Nexus Wars." Vorthak's face darkened. "Ancient history, wartime necessities." "War doesn't justify abandoning innocent civilians," Eric said from his position by the window. "And it certainly doesn't justify trading their safety for political gain." The Grand Minister turned his massive head toward Eric. "Humans are new to galactic politics. You don't understand the complexities." "We understand perfectly," Nancy cut in, "and we've made our decision. The Nearthal stay under Earth's protection." "There will be consequences," Vorthak warned, "severe ones." "Perhaps," Nancy agreed, "but before you threaten us further, I suggest you consider how quickly your purification systems would fail without human maintenance and parts." The meeting ended in a tense stalemate. As Vorthak departed, Intelligence Officer Samantha Wright approached Admiral Franklin with a concerned expression. "Admiral, we've intercepted communications," she said quietly. "The Krovak have dispatched mercenaries to Earth." "To take the Nearthal by force?" Nancy asked. Samantha nodded. "And there's something else. The messages mentioned Alliance approval. It seems Vorthak is playing both sides." Nancy straightened her uniform and turned to Eric. "Captain Doyle, effective immediately, you're appointed head of security for our Nearthal guests. Work with Samantha to increase our defenses." As they left the meeting, Eric saw Zithran waiting in the hallway. The alien's glow was dim with worry. "We have brought danger to your world," Zithran said. "Perhaps we should leave." Eric shook his head firmly. "No. For too long the galaxy has looked away from injustice when it was convenient. Earth won't make the same mistake." Zithran's glow brightened slightly. "Why do you help us when it causes you such trouble?" Eric smiled. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because if humans want to find our place among the stars, we need to decide what kind of species we want to be." Above them, through the skylight, the stars were coming out. Countless worlds spinning in the darkness. Somewhere out there, enemies were already moving against them. But for the first time in centuries, the Nearthal weren't facing those enemies alone. The Nevada desert stretched out in all directions, flat and empty under the hot sun. But now, in a remote valley surrounded by mountains, a strange structure rose from the sand. The Nearthal settlement looked unlike any human building. Its walls curved and flowed like frozen waves glowing softly in the twilight. Parts of it seemed almost alive, growing and shifting in slow, gentle movements. Inside, Zithran walked with Captain Eric Doyle through corridors lined with bioluminescent plants. 2 months had passed since the Nearthal had arrived on Earth. In that time, they had built this small colony with help from human engineers and scientists. "Your people have adapted well to Earth," Eric said, watching young Nearthal playing in a garden chamber. Their small bodies glowed brightly as they chased each other through specially designed pools of nutrient-rich water. "We are grateful," Zithran replied. "For generations we lived in hiding, always moving, always afraid. To have a home again." The alien's inner light pulsed with emotion. They entered a laboratory where Nearthal worked alongside human scientists. Dr. Alan Peterson looked up from a microscope and waved them over. "Captain, you need to see this," Alan said excitedly. He pointed to a screen showing human cells rapidly dividing and healing. "The Nearthal have helped us develop a treatment that can repair damaged heart tissue. We've already saved 12 patients who would have died waiting for transplants." Eric smiled. "That's wonderful news." "And it's just the beginning," Alan continued. "Their understanding of cellular communication is centuries ahead of ours. We're working on treatments for cancer, Alzheimer's, even regenerating lost limbs." As they talked, an alert sounded on Eric's communication device. He frowned at the message. "Excuse me. I need to speak with Commander Grace Miller." Eric found Grace at the security center, studying surveillance images. Grace had been assigned as military liaison to the Nearthal settlement, bringing a team of Marines to ensure their protection. "What's the situation?" Eric asked. Grace pointed to a screen showing a desert road. "We detected unusual movement about 5 miles from the perimeter. Drones captured these images." The screen showed a dust cloud rising from the empty desert. As the camera zoomed in, Eric could see a vehicle moving without lights despite the growing darkness. "Could be nothing," Grace said, "but my instincts say otherwise." Eric trusted Grace's instincts. She had served in conflict zones across 3 planets before this assignment. "Increase patrols. I'll alert Admiral Franklin." But before he could make the call, the security alarms blared. Multiple screens flashed red warnings. "Airspace breach," shouted the sensor operator. "Stealth craft detected entering our defense grid." Grace immediately activated the settlement's lockdown protocol. "All civilians to shelter areas. Security teams to positions." Eric rushed to the command center with Grace. They watched as the settlement's defenses tracked a small ship descending rapidly toward them. Its design was unfamiliar, with sharp angles and a dark surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Krovak design," Grace said grimly. "They've finally come." The intruding ship landed just outside the settlement's perimeter. Almost immediately, figures emerged. Tall, heavily armored warriors with elongated helmets that gave them an insect-like appearance. The Krovak commandos moved with frightening speed and precision. "They're heading for the research building," Eric realized. "They're after the Nearthal scientists." Grace was already mobilizing her defense teams. "We need to keep them away from the civilians." The battle was brief, but intense. The Krovak had advanced weapons that could cut through most barriers, but Grace's Marines were ready. They had trained for this moment, using special tactics designed to counter the Krovak's advantages. Eric joined the fight, helping to evacuate Nearthal researchers as the Krovak broke through the outer defenses. In the chaos, he found himself face to face with one of the alien warriors. The Krovak towered over him, mandibles clicking beneath its helmet as it raised its weapon. A brilliant flash of blue light erupted between them. Sithrin appeared, the alien's small body glowing with intense light that seemed to confuse the Krovak's targeting systems. It gave Eric just enough time to fire his own weapon, dropping the invader to the ground. "Their helmets are sensitive to certain light frequencies," Sithrin explained, voice strained from the effort of producing such bright light. "It is why they always wore special filters when attacking our homeworld." This information turned the tide of the battle. The human defenders adjusted their tactics, using light-based weapons to disorient the Krovak. Within minutes, the remaining commandos retreated to their ship and fled. In the aftermath, they assessed the damage. Several humans and Nearthal were injured, but remarkably, no one had been killed. More concerning was what they found on the captured Krovak soldier. Samantha Wright carefully removed the alien's communication device. "I can try to decode their transmissions. Maybe find out who sent them." Hours later, in a secure meeting room, Samantha shared her findings with Eric, Grace, and Admiral Franklin, who had arrived by emergency transport. "It's worse than we thought," Samantha said, her expression grim. "The communications confirm that elements within the Galactic Alliance are working directly with the Krovak." "Why would the Alliance work with their former enemies?" Grace asked. "Because both want the Nearthal's biotechnology," Eric suggested. "The Alliance officially pretends the Nearthal are extinct, while secretly trying to capture them for their scientific knowledge." Samantha nodded. "There's more. The messages mentioned something called Subject Zero, apparently a Nearthal with unique genetic markers even more valuable than the others." Admiral Franklin's face hardened. "This attack was just the beginning. Now that they've failed, they'll try again with greater force. And we might not get Alliance support to stop them," Eric added. "If half the Alliance leadership is involved in this conspiracy, then Earth stands alone," Franklin finished. Later that night, Eric found Sithrin standing outside, looking up at the stars. The alien's glow was dim, reflecting a sad mood. "I must tell you something," Sithrin said without turning. Something I have not shared with your scientists. What is it? Subject Zero is not a myth. He exists among us. Zithran pointed to a distant building where the eldest Nearthal lived. Elsevier is our oldest surviving member. His genetic pattern contains markers from our original homeworld, before our civilization was advanced enough for space travel. Why is that important? Because those ancient genetic patterns are the key to our most advanced biotechnology. Without them, much of our knowledge would be unusable. Zithran turned to face Eric. If the Krovak, or the corrupt Alliance officials, capture Elsevier, they could gain weapons of terrible power, the ability to create biological agents that target specific species, or even specific individuals. Eric understood now why the stakes were so high. This wasn't just about protecting refugees. It was about preventing dangerous biotechnology from falling into the wrong hands. We came to Earth seeking sanctuary, Zithran continued. But we may have only brought danger to your world instead. Eric placed a hand on the alien's shoulder. My people have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We won't do nothing, Zithran. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Above them, distant stars glimmered like the bioluminescent glow of the Nearthal themselves. Somewhere up there, enemies were plotting their next move. But here on Earth, humans had made their choice, to stand with the forgotten when the rest of the galaxy had turned away. 6 months had passed since the Nearthal arrived on Earth. Winter settled over the Nevada desert, bringing cold nights to the alien settlement. Inside the main meeting hall, Admiral Nancy Franklin stood before a large screen showing a message from the Galactic Alliance Council. The room was filled with human officials and Nearthal representatives. As of today, the Galactic Alliance has officially revoked Earth's membership, Nancy announced, her voice steady despite the gravity of the news. They cite our dangerous unilateral actions and harboring of controlled genetic assets as the reasons. A murmur of concern spread through the room. Captain Eric Doyle exchanged glances with Zithran, whose inner light pulsed with worry. What does this mean for us? Asked one of the human scientists. Nancy straightened her uniform jacket. It means Earth is now considered independent from Alliance oversight. Human ships are banned from Alliance space. Our colonies on distant worlds face evacuation orders. They're isolating us, Eric said, cutting us off from the rest of the galaxy. Yes, but we're not defenseless, Nancy replied. Earth has been preparing for this possibility. Our fleet has been reinforced, and we've accelerated our own shipbuilding program. Dr. Alan Peterson stood up from his seat. Admiral, there's something you should know. He nodded to his research partner, Lisa Ward, who activated a holographic display in the center of the room. The display showed medical equipment of various kinds. These are treatments and technologies that the Alliance has been using for decades, Alan explained. Advanced cancer treatments, neural regeneration techniques, even life extension methods. According to the information the Nearthal have shared, with us the Alliance has been deliberately withholding these from humanity. Is this true? Nancy asked, turning to Zithran. The alien nodded, inner light dimming with sadness. The Alliance has a policy of controlled technological distribution. They feared human expansion if your development happened too quickly. The Nearthal's regenerative abilities would have changed everything for humans, Lisa added. The Alliance knew this. It's another reason they want to reclaim the Nearthal, to prevent us from advancing too rapidly. The revelation sent a wave of anger through the human officials. For decades, they had believed the Alliance was helping humanity progress. Now they learned they had been deliberately held back. There's more, Samantha Wright said, stepping forward. The intelligence officer had been working tirelessly to uncover the conspiracy against Earth and the Nearthal. We've intercepted communications suggesting an Alliance blockade is forming at the edge of our solar system. Before anyone could respond, a loud explosion shook the building. Alarms began to sound throughout the settlement. We're under attack, Commander Grace Miller shouted, rushing into the room. Security breach at the diplomatic center on Mars. On screens around the room, they watched in horror as chaos unfolded at the Mars diplomatic facility. Smoke poured from damaged buildings and people ran for safety. Admiral Franklin, a voice called urgently from Nancy's communication device. This is Mars Security. We have a situation. There was an explosion during the diplomatic summit. Multiple casualties. Was it the Krovac? Nancy asked. No, ma'am. Initial evidence suggests Alliance operatives. They targeted our representatives and they specifically tried to reach you. Your shuttle was bombed, but you weren't on it. Nancy's face paled. An assassination attempt. Eric moved to her side. This goes beyond political pressure. They're trying to eliminate Earth's leadership. Nancy stood silent for a moment, absorbing the implications. Then her expression hardened with resolve. This changes everything. If the Alliance is willing to resort to assassination, we can no longer consider them potential allies. She turned to address the entire room. As of this moment, Earth formally declares itself independent from Alliance oversight and control. The declaration was met with solemn nods from the human officials. For the Neanderthal, whose inner lights pulsed with a mix of fear and hope, it meant Earth had fully committed to their protection. What happens now? Zithran asked. Now we prepare, Nancy replied. The Alliance blockade will try to isolate us, maybe even invade. We need to be ready. In the days that followed, the Neanderthal worked closely with human scientists to develop new technologies that might give Earth a fighting chance. Deep in the settlement's research labs, they focused on combining Neanderthal biological knowledge with human engineering. The problem with our current defenses, Grace explained to Eric during a strategy meeting, is that we can't detect the Krovac's stealth technology until it's almost too late. Zithran, who had been listening quietly, suddenly glowed brighter. Perhaps we could help with that. The alien led them to a laboratory where several Neanderthal were working with what looked like living tissue growing in large tanks. Our bodies sense light and energy in ways your instruments cannot, Zithran explained. We have been experimenting with growing larger versions of our sensory organs. One of the Neanderthal scientists, Mythalon, approached with a small glowing object that pulsed with gentle blue light. This is a prototype. It can detect the energy signatures of Krovac stealth systems from much greater distances than your technology, Grayson took the object carefully. If we could integrate this with our defense grid, we could create an early warning system, Eric finished. We'd see them coming long before they reach Earth. The project was named Luminous Shield, a defensive system that used the Neanderthal's bioluminescent properties to detect and eventually neutralize the Krovac's stealth technology. Human engineers worked alongside Neanderthal biologists, creating something neither species could have built alone. Meanwhile, the Alliance blockade grew stronger. 50 ships now surrounded the solar system, cutting Earth off from its few remaining allies. News from human colonies in distant systems became scarce as communication channels were restricted. One evening, as Eric walked through the quiet gardens of the Neanderthal settlement, he found an elderly Neanderthal sitting alone looking up at the stars. Unlike the others whose skin glowed blue, this one's light had a faint purple tinge. You must be Elthvir, Eric said, recognizing the elder known. As Subject Zero, the ancient Neanderthal nodded slowly. And you are the human captain who saved my people. I'm sorry we couldn't do more. The galaxy has turned against us because of our choice to help you. Elthavir's light pulsed gently. Not the whole galaxy. Just those who fear change. The elder beckoned Eric to sit beside him. I have been in deep meditation, searching through ancestral memories. Ancestral memories? My genetic code contains echoes of those who came before. It is how I carry our people's greatest knowledge. Elthavir's voice grew stronger. There is something you should know, a truth long forgotten. The Neanderthal were once caretakers of a powerful network of genetic libraries throughout the galaxy. Eric leaned closer, intrigued. Libraries for what purpose? To preserve life. In ages past, when the first great civilizations reached the stars, my ancestors cataloged all known forms of life, preserving their genetic codes against extinction. Elthavir's purple glow intensified. Earth sits upon one of these ancient Repositories. It is no accident that my people sought sanctuary here. We were drawn by echoes of our own past. This revelation stunned Eric. Are you saying there's an ancient Neanderthal facility hidden on Earth? Beneath your oceans, yes. If we could reach it, we might find technologies even the Alliance has forgotten. Tools that could protect both our peoples. As Eric absorbed this information, his communication device chimed with an urgent alert. The Alliance blockade was moving. Ships were breaking formation, heading toward Earth. The confrontation they had feared was finally beginning. But now, with Elthavir's revelation, they had a new hope. If they could locate the ancient repository before the Alliance forces reached them. The command center beneath Earth Space Defense Headquarters buzzed with activity. Large screens showed the Alliance fleet approaching, now just days away from reaching Earth. Admiral Nancy Franklin studied the tactical displays with a grim expression. Despite Earth's preparations, they were outnumbered. We can't win a direct confrontation, she admitted to the room of military leaders and scientists. Maybe we won't have to fight, Eric said. He had just returned from a secret mission to the Pacific Ocean with Elthavir and a team of explorers. We found it, the ancient Neanderthal repository. Excitement rippled through the room. Eric activated a holographic display showing underwater footage of a massive structure built into the ocean floor near the Mariana Trench. Parts of it glowed with the same bioluminescent technology seen in Neanderthal buildings, but on a much grander scale. It was hidden under layers of rock and coral, Eric explained. Our submarines almost missed it, but Elthavir could sense its energy signature. Zithrin moved closer to the display, inner light pulsing with emotion. After thousands of years, to see the work of our ancestors still intact. What's inside? Nancy asked. We've only explored a small section, Eric replied. But already we've found technology that could change everything. The facility houses a vast genetic library containing DNA samples from millions of species across the galaxy, many now extinct. And there's a defense system unlike anything we've ever seen. Before Eric could explain further, an alert sounded. One of the communication officers called out, "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's not from the Alliance." Everyone turned to the main screen as a new face appeared. The alien had delicate features with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Its eyes were large and silver, seeming to reflect light rather than absorb it. Greetings, people of Earth. I am Trell, ambassador of the Voshkar Consensus. Murmurs spread through the room. The Voshkar were legendary, an ancient and highly advanced species that had withdrawn from galactic politics centuries ago. Most humans had never seen one before. Ambassador Trell, Nancy responded, stepping forward. This is unexpected. The Voshkar have maintained isolation for over 300 years. Trell nodded, the movement fluid and graceful. Yes, we have observed rather than participated, but recent events have interested us. The conflict with the Alliance, Eric guessed. Not the conflict itself, Trell corrected. Rather the reason for it. You chose to protect the Neanderthal when the rest of the galaxy abandoned them to their fate. This display of principle over expediency is rare. It was the right thing to do, Nancy said simply. Trell's skin rippled with colors that suggested approval. Indeed. Morality before politics is a value the galaxy has long forgotten in favor of what your species calls realpolitik. This is why we have chosen to break our silence. What exactly are you offering? Nancy asked cautiously. Alliance. Access to technologies beyond what the Galactic Alliance possesses, and immediate assistance against the fleet approaching your world. The offer stunned everyone in the room. With Voshkar support, Earth's position would change dramatically. Why now? Eric asked. The Neanderthal were abandoned centuries ago. Why didn't you help them then? Trell's expression became solemn. A fair question. The answer is not one we are proud of. We, too, chose non-intervention. We watched and waited, as is our way. But your actions have challenged our thinking. Sometimes observation must give way to action. After the transmission ended, Earth's leaders debated the offer. Some were suspicious of the Voshkar's sudden appearance, but most recognized it as their best hope for survival. We accept their help, Nancy finally decided. But we continue our own preparations as well. Eric, I want you to lead a mission to the Galactic Alliance headquarters on Centauri. Prime. Eric looked surprised. A mission? In the middle of their territory? Nancy nodded. With Voshkar technology, you might be able to infiltrate their security. Your objective? Access their central database and expose the conspiracy to the broader galactic community. Many Alliance worlds don't know the truth about what their leaders did to the Nearthal or what they're planning now. The mission was dangerous, but vital. If enough Alliance worlds learned the truth, they might withdraw support for the coming attack on Earth. 2 days later, a sleek Voshkar vessel departed Earth with Eric's team aboard. The ship's advanced stealth technology would allow them to slip past the Alliance blockade undetected. With Eric were Commander Grace Miller, Intelligence Officer Samantha Wright, and 3 Nearthal volunteers whose unique biology could bypass Alliance security systems. The Voshkar ship is incredible, Samantha said as they entered Alliance space. Their technology must be centuries beyond the Alliance's. Yet they chose isolation rather than leadership, Grace noted. I wonder why. They reached Centauri Prime without incident. The planet was a hub of Alliance activity, with thousands of ships coming and going each day. The team landed at a remote location and made their way to the capital city using false identities provided by Samantha. The Alliance central database was housed in a massive tower at the city's center. Security was tight, but the Nearthal team members could alter their bioluminescence to match specific patterns that fooled the biometric scanners. Remember, Eric told the team as they approached the building, our goal is to access the classified records about the Nearthal and transmit them to the public Alliance networks. We don't engage unless absolutely necessary. They made it through 3 security checkpoints before things went wrong. One of the Alliance guards recognized Grace despite her disguise. Alarms blared throughout the building. Get to the central server room, Eric shouted as security forces converged on their position. I'll hold them off. Grace and Samantha led the Nearthal team members deeper into the facility, while Eric and one of the Nearthal engineers named Rilten created a diversion. They fought their way through several guards using non-lethal tactics where possible. In the server room, Samantha worked frantically to access the classified files while Grace secured the doorway. I found them, Samantha eventually called out. Records of the deal with the Krovak, orders to abandon Nearthal worlds, everything. Send it to every public network in the Alliance, Grace ordered. As Samantha transmitted the files, a squad of elite Alliance guards broke through the outer defenses. One fired a high-energy weapon at a Nearthal engineer. Grace threw herself in front of the alien, taking the blast in her chest. She collapsed to the ground, severely wounded. Eric arrived to find Grace dying on the floor. The mission was accomplished. The files were transmitted, but at terrible cost. As he cradled his wounded friend Elthavir, who had insisted on joining the mission despite his age, knelt beside them. I can help her, the elderly Nearthal said, but the process is irreversible. It will create a permanent bond between our biologies. Do it, Eric said without hesitation. Save her. Elthavir placed his hands on Grace's wound. His purple glow intensified, flowing into her body like liquid light. Grace's eyes opened, now shimmering with the same bioluminescent quality as the Nearthal. They escaped the facility as chaos erupted across the Alliance capital. The truth was spreading rapidly from world to world. By the time they reached their ship, reports were coming in of Alliance vessels breaking formation, returning to defend their homeworlds against potential reprisals from their own government. Mission had succeeded. The Alliance blockade around Earth was disintegrating as ships deserted to protect their home systems. But as they set course for Earth, Grace looked down at her hands, now faintly glowing with Nearthal light. She was the first human Nearthal hybrid, changed forever by Elthavir's desperate healing. 1 year had passed since the mission to Centauri Prime. Earth's skyline had changed dramatically. Sleek towers with gentle curves rose alongside traditional human buildings. Many incorporated the bioluminescent technology of the Nearthal, glowing softly at night and drawing energy directly from sunlight during the day. Admiral Eric Doyle stood on the balcony of the New Earth Diplomatic Center, watching ships come and go in the busy sky above. He had been promoted after the successful mission that had exposed the Alliance conspiracy. Now he oversaw Earth's expanded fleet, which protected not just their own world, but several others who had joined what was called the Mutual Defense Accord. "Still, getting used to the view?" asked a familiar voice. Eric turned to see Grace Miller approaching. She wore her military uniform with the same confidence as always, but her skin now had a subtle glow, especially visible in dimmer light. The hybrid biology she shared with the Nearthal had given her unique insights that helped bridge understanding between the species. "I don't think I'll ever get used to it," Eric admitted. "A year ago we were facing destruction. Now we're at the center of a new coalition." Grace nodded, looking up at a passing Voshkar ship, its iridescent hull shimmering in the sunlight. "The old alliance is still struggling to rebuild after half its members left. Their new leadership seems more honest, at least." "They had to change," Eric said. "Too many worlds saw the truth about how they operated." They walked inside to the main conference room, where representatives from 24 species had gathered. Some were former Alliance members who had broken away. Others were species that the old Alliance had deemed strategically insignificant, smaller civilizations that had never been offered protection or membership. At the center of the room stood a holographic display showing the Mutual Defense Accord's territory, a growing network of systems united not by political control, but by principles of sovereignty and mutual aid. Zithran approached them, the Nearthals glow bright and healthy. The once dwindling species now had a growing population, with communities established on Earth and several terraformed asteroids throughout the solar system. "The agricultural project on Delta Station is exceeding expectations," Zithran reported. "Our bioengineering techniques combined with human farming methods have increased food production by 300%. This was just one of many collaborations. The Nearthal's knowledge of biological systems, combined with human innovation and Voshkar technology, had created medical and agricultural breakthroughs that benefited all member worlds." Eric was about to respond when Admiral Nancy Franklin entered the room. Though she had been offered the leadership position of the new coalition, she had chosen to remain focused on Earth's defenses, leaving diplomatic matters to others. "We've received a report from the outpost in the Lyra sector," she announced to the gathered representatives. "The remaining Krovak forces have withdrawn from the region. It seems they no longer see profit in challenging our coalition." Applause rippled through the room. The Krovak Empire, once feared throughout the galaxy, had been steadily losing power as more worlds gained protection under the Accord. "It is a significant achievement," said Ambassador Trell of the Voshkar, his skin shifting through pleased colors. "When we chose to end our isolation and support Earth, we did not anticipate how quickly your coalition would grow." "People respond to fairness," Eric replied. "The old alliance was built on political calculation, who was useful, who was expendable. We built the Accord on the idea that every world deserves protection, regardless of their strategic value." As the meeting continued, Eric found himself thinking about how much had changed. The ancient Nearthal repository discovered beneath Earth's oceans had yielded technologies that were still being studied. Some of the genetic samples preserved there were being used to restore ecosystems on damaged worlds. The Nearthal themselves had gone from a forgotten, nearly extinct species to valued members of an interstellar community. After the meeting, Eric returned to his office to find Elthavir waiting for him. The elderly Nearthal, once known only as Subject Zero, had become a respected advisor to both human and Nearthal leaders. "You seem troubled, Admiral," Elthavir observed. Eric smiled slightly. "Not troubled, just reflective. Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if the Starlight Wanderer had never found your ship in that asteroid field? Then we would have perished, and the galaxy would have continued as before." Elthavir said simply, "Your discovery of us created a turning point, a moment when humanity chose a different path than the one the Alliance had laid out for you. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication. A junior officer appeared on the view screen, her expression concerned. "Admiral, we've received a distress signal from the Vega system. An unidentified species is under attack by raiders. They're asking for help." Eric checked the details. "Vega is outside our territory. The inhabitants aren't signatories to the accord." "No, sir. It appears they're a newly spacefaring civilization. They've only recently developed interstellar communication." Eric thought for a moment. Under the old alliance, such a civilization would be evaluated for their strategic value before any aid was offered. Many would be left to fend for themselves, as the Nearthal had been. "Prepare the Starlight Defender for immediate departure," Eric ordered, referring to the redesigned and upgraded version of his original vessel. "Contact our closest allies in that sector. We'll coordinate a relief mission." As he prepared to leave for the ship, Zithran approached him in the corridor. "This new species is not part of our accord. They have no formal ties to Earth or any of our allies. Why risk our ships and people to help them?" Eric understood the question. After centuries of being abandoned by others, the Nearthal sometimes struggled to understand why humans would risk themselves for strangers. "Because someone once turned away when you needed help," he explained gently. "And we promised ourselves we would never do the same." Zithran's glow brightened with understanding. "This is why so many follow Earth's lead now. Not because of your technology or strength, but because of this choice you make again and again." Hours later, the Starlight Defender prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed. On the bridge, Eric looked at his crew. Humans working alongside. Nearthal officers with Grace Miller as his second-in-command, her subtle glow a constant reminder of the bond between their species. "Course set for the Vega system," the navigator reported. "Ready to jump on your command." Eric nodded. "Engage." As the stars streaked into lines around them, he thought about how the galaxy was rebuilding itself, not under the control of a calculating alliance that measured worlds by their strategic value, but as a community of worlds that recognized the inherent worth in each civilization, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Humanity had found its true place not as conquerors or even equals, but as guardians of those the powerful would prefer to forget, and in doing so, they had changed the course of galactic history. The Starlight Defender disappeared into the depths of space, racing to help those in need, continuing the mission that had begun with a single act of compassion in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, when humans had chosen to protect a species that everyone else had turned away from.